Brazil haven't won a World Cup since 2002. That's 24 years, 7 tournaments, and a list of exits that gets more painful every time you look at it. What makes this so strange is that Brazil aren't some small nation scraping through qualification. They're the most decorated team in World Cup history, and they export more players than any country on earth. So what's actually going wrong? Most people treat each exit as its own separate disaster. The 7-1, the Croatia shootout, the Ronaldinho red card, each one written off as bad luck. But stack them together and a different picture emerges. A specific, repeating problem Brazil hasn't solved. That's what we're breaking down. What it is, why it keeps happening, and what Brazil are actually doing about it. Let's start with the stat that almost nobody talks about, because it reframes the entire conversation. Brazil have been knocked out in the quarterfinals in 4 of their last 5 World Cups, 4 out of 5. And every single time, the team that beat them was European, never South American, never African. Most people see Brazil's drought as a string of unrelated bad days. It isn't. It's the same exit, over and over. Quarter-final, European opponent, gone. 2022 was the most painful version, and it came with a record that had never happened in 92 years of World Cup football. Against Croatia in the quarter-final, Neymar scored in the 106th minute of extra time, the kind of goal that looked destined to define his career. Croatia equalised in the 117th. Brazil lost the shootout. Here's the part almost nobody mentions. Brazil became the first team in World Cup history eliminated from a knockout match after scoring the opening goal in extra time. In 92 years and hundreds of knockout games, that had never happened to anyone, until Brazil. Croatia, meanwhile, now have a perfect World Cup shootout record. 4 games, 4 wins. A country of about 4 million people, smaller than the city of Rio de Janeiro, has a 100% record against the biggest footballing nation on the planet. That alone should sting. But nothing compares to 2014, and not just the scoreline. The 7-1 against Germany is one of the most talked about results in football history, but most people don't know how fast it happened. Germany scored 4 goals in 6 minutes and 40 seconds. Toni Kroos scored twice in 69 seconds, the fastest brace in World Cup history. And here's the eerie detail. Brazil hadn't lost a competitive match at home in 39 years, a run of 62 games stretching back to 1975. And that 1975 loss happened in the Mineirão, the exact same stadium where Germany put 7 past them. Same ground, same wound, 4 decades apart. The 7-1 gets all the attention, but 2014 was a systemic collapse. Brazil conceded 14 goals across the tournament, more than any host nation in World Cup history, then lost the third-place playoff 3-0 to the Netherlands days later. This wasn't one bad night. The structure was broken. And here's the part nobody mentions. That defeat didn't just end a tournament, it ended careers. 10 players from that squad never played for Brazil again. Julio Cesar, Dante, Ramirez, Bernard, Joe, Fred, gone. It detonated an entire generation and forced a reset with no continuity plan in place. That's not a football problem. That's an organisational one. And it leads straight into the bigger issue that's plagued Brazil ever since. Between 2022 and now, Brazil cycled through 4 coaches in a single World Cup cycle. Tite left after Qatar. Fernando Diniz came in on an interim basis. And here's where it gets genuinely bizarre. He was managing Fluminense and the national team at the same time. Simultaneously. No long-term plan, just a stopgap that predictably went nowhere. Then Dorival Jr. came in, and now Brazil have landed on Carlo Ancelotti for 2026, the decision that broke a century of tradition. For the first time in their history, Brazil have hired a foreign coach. Ancelotti is the first non-Brazilian manager ever to take charge of the national team at a World Cup. Think about what that means. Brazil became five-time world champions using five different Brazilian coaches. The national identity was built around the idea that Brazilian football was its own thing, a philosophy, a culture, a way of playing that only Brazilians truly understood. And they've now abandoned that completely because nothing else was working. One member of the 2002 World Cup winning staff publicly objected, pointing out exactly that history. But the CBF made the call anyway. When you break a 100-year-old taboo, it tells you how serious the situation actually is. Now, if you're enjoying this breakdown and you want to understand more of the structural stories behind football's biggest puzzles, subscribe and hit the bell, because this is exactly the kind of content we dig into regularly. And drop a comment below. Do you think Ancelotti is the right call, or is hiring a foreigner actually a symptom of the deeper problem? I'm genuinely curious what people think on that one, because here's the deeper problem, and this one is counterintuitive. Brazil exports more footballers than any other nation on earth. Between 2020 and 2025, over 3,000 Brazilian players moved abroad, more than France, more than Argentina, more than anyone. In 2024 alone, foreign clubs spent $1.2 billion on Brazilian talent. On the surface, that sounds like strength. It sounds like Brazil is producing so much quality that the whole world wants a piece of it. But the issue is what happens to those players once they leave. The kids are going too young. Vitor Roque joined Barcelona at 18. He barely played. He was absorbed into a rigid European academy structure that had no patience for the kind of creative, instinctive football he'd grown up playing, and he ended up being sent back to Brazil, having lost momentum at exactly the age when he should have been developing. That story isn't unique to him, it's the pattern. Brazil is the world's biggest talent factory, but it's exporting raw material before it's finished. The players who come out the other side are technically solid, tactically disciplined, European in their approach, and in the process, something gets lost. Which actually leads to the most uncomfortable question in this whole conversation. What exactly is it that Brazil are trying to get back? Here's the contrarian take. The romantic story is that Brazil used to play beautiful, expressive football, and they've lost that. But look at the actual history. Their 1994 win was built on defensive solidity and pragmatism. Their 2002 win had Ronaldo, Ronaldinho and Rivaldo, yes, but it was also a very organised, results-focused side. The last Brazilian team that truly played the free-flowing, creative football everyone romanticises was the 1982 side. Zico, Falcao, Socrates, and they didn't even win the tournament. They went out in the second group stage. So the idea that Brazil won by playing beautiful football and then stopped winning when they stopped playing beautiful football doesn't quite hold up. The winning teams weren't always the beautiful ones. The tension between magic and results has been there for a long time, and Brazil has never fully resolved it. So where does that leave them now? They've hired their first foreign coach in history. They're still producing extraordinary talent, but losing it to European systems before it fully develops. They keep hitting the same wall at the same stage against the same type of opponent. And the 2026 World Cup, which is being hosted in North America, is coming faster than it feels. The drought isn't just about bad luck or bad nights. It's about a structural gap between the talent Brazil produces and the system that's supposed to turn that talent into a winning team. It's about a coaching carousel that kept resetting the clock. It's about players leaving too young and coming back shaped by someone else's idea of football. And it's about a quarterfinal wall that has held for over 2 decades. Whether Ancelotti can fix all of that or any of it is genuinely one of the most interesting questions in world football right now. And if you want to understand what the 2026 cycle actually looks like for Brazil, the squad they're building, and whether Ancelotti's track record translates to international football, that video is worth watching next. It picks up right where this one leaves off. 24 years is a long time, but the reasons are clearer than most people think. And the solution, if there is one, is going to have to be bigger than just finding the right 11 players.